At 3:18 a.m. on October 26, 1942, Platoon Sergeant Mitchell Paige stood in isolation behind an M1917 Browning water-cooled machine gun. Situated on a ridge 400 yards south of Henderson Field, Guadalcanal, he observed 2,000 Japanese soldiers advancing through the nocturnal jungle. Paige, then 24, commanded a machine gun cohort comprising 4 firearms and 16 Marines. They had held this ridge for 6 hours. 3 of their guns were now obliterated. 15 Marines lay deceased or injured. Paige remained solitary with just one machine gun. The M1917, including its tripod and water, weighed 103 pounds. It boasted a fire rate of 450 rounds per minute and an effective range of 1,500 yards, fueled by belt-fed .3006 Springfield ammunition. The weapon had been firing continuously for 3 hours, its water jacket boiling, its barrel aglow with a red hue in the dimness. Paige had 600 rounds left, equating to roughly 90 seconds of continuous firing. 2,000 Japanese soldiers were merely 100 yards away and closing in. His directive was straightforward: hold this ridge. Should the ridge fall, Henderson Field would follow. If Henderson Field fell, Guadalcanal would be lost. If Guadalcanal fell, Japan would claim victory in the Pacific. Paige endured. If you wish to witness how a single Marine repelled an entire Japanese regiment, please click the like button and subscribe for more extraordinary narratives. Returning to Paige's story. Mitchell Paige was born on August 31, 1918, in Charleroi, Pennsylvania, a coal mining community with a population of 10,000. His father, a Serbian immigrant, worked in a steel mill, while his mother was American-born. The family belonged to the working class. Paige attended Charleroi High School, where his academic performance was average, but he distinguished himself in football as an aggressive, strong linebacker, standing 5 feet 10 inches tall and weighing 180 pounds. After graduating in 1936, jobs were scarce due to the ongoing depression. Paige took on various temporary positions, from steel mill construction to loading dock work. In September 1936, at 18, he joined the United States Marine Corps, drawn by the steady pay of $21 per month and the prospect of purpose and training. Paige reported to the Marine Corps Recruit Depot at Parris Island, South Carolina, in September 1936. His grueling 8-week boot camp focused on physical conditioning, marksmanship, and military discipline, areas where Paige excelled. He achieved an expert rifle qualification score, hitting 238 out of a possible 250 points, and at 300 yards, he struck the bullseye 18 out of 20 times. The Marines highly regarded marksmanship, emphasizing that every Marine was a rifleman, a role Paige performed admirably. After boot camp, Paige was assigned to the Marine Barracks at Naval Station Norfolk, Virginia, undertaking guard duties and ceremonial functions, typical peacetime roles. In 1937, he attended machine gun school at Quantico, Virginia. The Marine Corps placed significant importance on crew-served weapons, with machine guns providing sustained firepower, where one machine gun could equal the defensive output of 20 riflemen. The school covered deployment, maintenance, and tactical use. Paige meticulously studied the M1917 Browning machine gun, a weapon that would crucially save his life 6 years later. The M1917 Browning was engineered by John Moses Browning in 1917. It was a water-cooled, recoil-operated belt-fed weapon. The gun itself weighed 32.6 pounds, with its M1917A1 tripod adding another 53 pounds. The water jacket contained 7 pints, bringing the total combat weight to 103 pounds when loaded with water and ammunition. It fired .30-06 Springfield cartridges, the standard U.S. military rifle round, with a bullet weight of 150 grains and a muzzle velocity of 2,800 feet per second. The ammunition was belt-fed in 250-round cloth belts, allowing a sustained rate of fire of 450 rounds per minute and a maximum of 600 rounds per minute. Its effective range extended to 1,500 yards, with a maximum range of 3,500 yards. The M1917 was renowned for its reliability, simplicity, and lethal effectiveness, and Paige became proficient in its operation. In 1939, Paige was promoted to corporal, then to private first class in 1940, and sergeant in 1941. He was recognized as a highly competent NCO, a disciplined and skilled leader. On December 7, 1941, Japan launched its attack on Pearl Harbor, drawing the United States into World War II. Paige was assigned to the 1st Battalion, 7th Marine Regiment, 1st Marine Division. The division deployed to the Pacific in May 1942, with New Zealand as their destination, tasked with preparing for offensive operations against Japan. The Marines were to attack, but the crucial question was where. In July 1942, they learned their objective: Guadalcanal. Guadalcanal, an island within the Solomon Islands chain, stretched 90 miles long and 25 miles wide, situated 1,200 miles northeast of Australia. Its terrain was characterized by a dense jungle, mountains, rivers, and swamps. Under a tropical climate, with temperatures ranging from 85 to 95 degrees Fahrenheit, humidity between 80% and 90%, and daily rainfall. Diseases were rampant, including malaria, dengue fever, and dysentery. Guadalcanal held immense strategic importance. Japan was constructing an airfield there, which, if completed, would grant Japanese aircraft control over the Solomon Islands, posing a threat to Australia and potentially severing Allied supply lines. Capturing this airfield became imperative. The 1st Marine Division was assigned this critical mission. On August 7, 1942, 11,000 Marines landed on Guadalcanal, encountering minimal resistance as Japanese construction troops retreated into the jungle. By August 8th, the Marines had seized the airfield, renaming it Henderson Field in memory of Major Lofton Henderson, who perished at Midway. Preparing for anticipated Japanese counterattacks, the Marines established defensive positions. Their expectations proved correct, as Japan committed to reclaiming Guadalcanal, reinforcing their forces with 30,000 troops between August and November 1942. The Japanese strategy was straightforward: assault Henderson Field, neutralize American aircraft, and retake the island. The Marines' strategy was equally clear: defend Henderson Field at all costs. The ensuing battles were savage, marked by hand-to-hand combat, night assaults, artillery and naval bombardments, and air attacks. Both sides sustained severe casualties, yet the Marines held their ground. Henderson Field remained operational, allowing American aircraft to dominate during daylight, while Japanese vessels controlled the nights. The campaign devolved into a grueling war of attrition, where endurance would determine victory. Mitchell Paige arrived on Guadalcanal in September 1942, now a platoon sergeant. He commanded a machine gun section within the 7th Marines, 1st Battalion, Company H, 4 M1917 Browning machine guns, and 16 Marines. Their position was a ridge south of Henderson Field, grimly nicknamed Coffin Corner, due to previous Marine losses there, a label that proved fitting. Paige meticulously prepared his section's defenses, positioning fighting holes along the ridge crest. Each gun placement was carefully sighted, ensuring overlapping fields of fire, clear sectors, ample cover, stockpiled ammunition, and maintained water supplies. For weeks, Paige honed these positions, certain that the Japanese would attack, though uncertain of the exact timing or scale. On October 23, 1942, intelligence reported significant Japanese troop movements converging on American lines. The following day, October 24th, Japanese probing attacks tested the defenses. On October 25th, Japanese artillery began a heavy bombardment of Marine positions with 150mm howitzers, a barrage that continued throughout the day. By 9 p.m. on October 25th, the bombardment intensified, signaling an imminent Japanese assault. At 9:30 p.m., Japanese infantry engaged Marine lines. The initial contact occurred 800 yards east of Paige's position. This was a massive assault, regimental strength, with over 3,000 Japanese soldiers. Their objective was Henderson Field, and their direct route led through Paige's Ridge. At 9:47 p.m., Paige's section received orders. Stand by to repel attack. Estimated enemy strength, battalion, implying 800 to 1,000 soldiers. Against these odds, Paige's section, with 16 Marines and 4 machine guns, faced a terrible situation. But their mission was unequivocal: hold the ridge, prevent Japanese penetration. Paige meticulously arrayed his men. Gun number 1 on the far left flank, gun number 2 in the center left, gun number 3 in the center right, and gun number 4 on the far right flank. Paige positioned himself centrally to coordinate all 4 weapons. Each gun was stocked with 2,000 rounds, organized into 8 250-round belts. Paige stressed strict fire discipline. Short bursts of 5 to 7 rounds to conserve ammunition, anticipating a prolonged engagement. At 10:15 p.m., hundreds of Japanese soldiers appeared 400 yards downslope, moving uphill in a formation assault. The Marines held their fire, awaiting command to let the enemy draw closer. At 300 yards, Japanese officers began issuing banzai shouts, initiating the charge. At 250 yards, Paige gave the order. Fire! The 4 M1917 machine guns unleashed a combined rate of 1,800 rounds per minute. The .30-06 rounds tore through the Japanese formation, felling men and momentarily disrupting the charge. However, more Japanese soldiers emerged, and the assault persisted. The machine guns maintained sustained fire, their 5 to 7 round bursts causing the barrels to glow in the darkness and the water jackets to steam. Still, the Japanese continued their advance. At 10:47 p.m., gun number 1 was struck by a Japanese grenade, destroying the weapon and killing 2 Marines, with 1 wounded. At 11:23 p.m., gun number 4 was overrun, resulting in 3 Marines killed in hand-to-hand combat and the gun captured. By 12:08 a.m., the crew of gun number 3 was eliminated by Japanese machine gun fire, adding 3 more Marines to the casualties. Only gun number 2 remained, under Paige's direct command. This was Paige's gun, manned by himself, Private John Schmidt as assistant gunner, and Private Joseph Leipert and Private Robert Gaston as ammunition handlers. 4 Marines stood against hundreds of Japanese soldiers. The fallen positions had accounted for perhaps 150 Japanese, but many, many more kept coming. At 1:47 a.m. on October 26, 1942, a Japanese grenade detonated near gun number 2. Schmidt was killed instantly. Leipert sustained shrapnel wounds to the chest and was evacuated. Gaston fell to rifle fire 3 minutes later. Mitchell Paige was now alone. 1 Marine, 1 machine gun. Hundreds of Japanese soldiers advanced just 50 yards downslope. Paige fired belt after belt. The M1917 was engineered for sustained fire, yet even it had limits. Its water jacket boiled, spewing steam from the overflow, and the barrel glowed red-hot, visibly evident in the darkness. Paige understood he could not cease firing. To stop meant the Japanese would overrun his position, and with it, Henderson Field would fall. He had begun the battle with 2,500 rounds, having already expended approximately 1,500 rounds supporting the other guns. With 1,000 rounds remaining, this amounted to 2.22 minutes of sustained fire at 450 rounds per minute. However, Paige could not sustain fire. The gun would catastrophically overheat. The firearm accessory would distort, and the mechanism itself would malfunction. He discharged controlled bursts, comprising 5 to 7 rounds. A brief pause ensued for target identification before he resumed firing. This method conserved his ammunition, but afforded the Japanese forces time to advance, which they did. By 2:15 a.m., Japanese soldiers were within 30 yards of Paige's position, close enough to hurl grenades. They launched their ordnance, and Paige swiftly sought cover. A grenade detonated 10 feet from the weapon, sending shrapnel into the tripod, though the gun remained intact. Paige swiftly returned to his post and discharged the weapon, felling 6 Japanese soldiers. The barrel now radiated with intense white heat, and the water jacket was nearly depleted through evaporation. Paige urgently required more water. He seized his canteen and poured its contents into the jacket inlet. The liquid instantly transformed into steam. He poured again, and the jacket absorbed 3 canteens, totaling 2 pints, a meager but necessary replenishment. Paige resumed firing, but the weapon jammed due to a faulty round. He cleared the obstruction in 5 seconds as Japanese soldiers surged forward. Paige fired, and they fell. The gun jammed once more, its belt twisted. Paige rectified the issue in 8 seconds, and more Japanese assailed his position. He fired, but the attacks remained relentless. By 2:47 a.m., Paige had 400 rounds remaining. The Japanese assaults continued unabated, with bodies accumulating 20 yards from his position, dozens of them. Yet, more Japanese continued to advance. Paige counted 50 visible enemies, with hundreds more hidden behind them. He understood he could not eliminate them all, lacking sufficient ammunition. But he persisted in firing. At 3 a.m., Japanese soldiers attempted a flanking maneuver, moving left along the ridge. Paige rotated the weapon and fired into the attacking force, causing them to scatter. Some fell, others retreated, but this action consumed precious ammunition. By 3:15 a.m., Paige had 250 rounds left. This equated to 1 belt, offering 33 seconds of continuous fire at maximum rate, or perhaps 90 seconds of controlled bursts, an insufficient amount. The Japanese were regrouping for another assault. He could see them 100 yards downhill, forming ranks, their officers shouting commands. They would charge, Paige would expend his final belt, and then he would be overwhelmed. Henderson Field would fall. At 3:18 a.m., the Japanese surged forward, over 200 soldiers screaming, "Banzai! Banzai!" They were 80 yards away. Paige discharged his last belt. The gun throbbed, tracers arced down the slope, and Japanese soldiers collapsed. But their advance continued. 60 yards. Paige fired. 40 yards. Paige fired. The belt ran out. Click. Empty. The Japanese were 30 yards away. Paige grabbed his M1911 pistol, loaded with 7 rounds of .45 ACP. He fired, and 1 Japanese soldier fell. 6 rounds remained, with 20 Japanese soldiers charging. Paige understood his impending demise, but accepted he would perish fighting. He fired again. Another Japanese fell. 5 rounds left. Then he heard it. Behind him, Marines advanced, reinforcements. Lieutenant Robert Gaylor leading 40 Marines from Company H. They had breached the Japanese encirclement and were launching a counterattack. Paige rose. He looked at his machine gun. Empty. Useless. No, not useless. He detached the M1917 from its tripod. Weighing 32.6 pounds, he lifted it. He snatched the last ammunition belt from the ground, 50 rounds remaining. He loaded the belt. He held the machine gun in his arms like a rifle. The barrel glowed red-hot, burning his hands, but he disregarded the pain. At 3:19 a.m., Paige charged down the ridge, firing the M1917 from his hip, with 40 Marines following him. The Japanese were stunned. Americans do not counterattack at night. They defend. But Paige was attacking with a machine gun, firing from the hip. Firing the M1917 from the hip was insane. The weapon weighed 32 pounds and generated severe recoil. It was designed to be fired from a tripod, but Paige had no tripod. He had no time to remount it. The Japanese were here. He fired. The recoil nearly toppled him. He braced himself. He fired again, a 6-round burst. Japanese soldiers fell. The Marines behind him discharged their M1 Garens. The Japanese charge faltered. They retreated down the slope. Paige pursued, firing the M1917 until the belt was empty. 50 rounds in 8 seconds. Then he dropped the weapon, too heavy. He drew his pistol, 5 rounds remaining. He fired. 2 Japanese soldiers fell. 3 rounds left. He continued his advance. The Marines pressed down the ridge, engaging in hand-to-hand combat. Bayonets, knives, entrenching tools. Brutal. By 3:47 a.m., the Japanese withdrew, retreating into the jungle. The Marines held the ridge. Paige stopped, utterly exhausted. He had been fighting for 6 hours. His hands were seared from the machine gun barrel. His ears rang from the weapon's deafening noise. He was covered in blood, mostly Japanese. He surveyed his surroundings. Bodies lay everywhere. Japanese bodies. 50 near his gun position. Another 150 scattered down the ridge, dead. More were wounded and crawling. The Marines finished them. No prisoners. This was Guadalcanal. No mercy. The ridge was secured. Henderson Field was safe. Dawn approached. The battle concluded. At 6:30 a.m., Paige tallied the deceased. The Japanese had launched their assault with 2,000 soldiers. Over 200 lay dead before Paige's position, with another 100 wounded. Approximately 300 casualties in Paige's sector alone. 15 Marines had perished defending the ridge. 16 had initially been present. Paige survived, the sole survivor of his original machine gun section. The other 15 were gone. Schmid, Leipart, and Gaston, the crews of guns number 1, number 3, and number 4, were all dead. But they had held. The ridge did not fall. Henderson Field did not fall. The Japanese attack was thwarted. The cost was 15 Marines. The gain was retaining Guadalcanal. The mathematics were stark but clear. Paige's company commander, Captain Louis Doc Ditta, inspected the position at 7 a.m. He counted the bodies. He examined the machine gun. He interviewed Paige. Paige's account was concise. The enemy attacked at 2200 hours. 3 guns were destroyed by 0200 hours. He fought alone until 0319 hours. Counterattacked with reinforcements. The enemy withdrew at 0347 hours. Estimated enemy casualties, 200. Paige did not mention his 90 minutes of solitary resistance. He did not mention firing the machine gun from the hip. He did not mention charging down the ridge. Captain Ditta, however, did. He recommended Paige for the Medal of Honor. The recommendation moved through the channels: battalion, regiment, division, Fleet Marine Force Pacific, Navy Department. On May 21, 1943, the recommendation was approved. President Franklin Roosevelt would present the Medal of Honor to Platoon Sergeant Mitchell Paige. The ceremony was slated for September 15, 1943, in Washington, D.C. But first, Paige had to endure the remainder of the Guadalcanal campaign. The conflict for Guadalcanal persisted until February 1943. Japanese reinforcements repeatedly attempted to reclaim Henderson Field, but failed. American reinforcements arrived. The 2nd Marine Division, the Army's Americal Division. By February 1943, 50,000 American troops were on Guadalcanal. 30,000 Japanese troops were either dead, evacuated, or succumbing to disease. On February 9, 1943, the final Japanese forces withdrew. The battle was over. An American victory. The cost? 7,100 American dead, 30,000 Japanese dead. Guadalcanal marked the turning point. Japan's advance ceased. From February 1943 onward, Japan retreated slowly, bloodily, but retreated nonetheless. Paige contributed significantly to that turning point. 1 Marine, 1 machine gun, 3 hours, 200 Japanese dead. Paige was evacuated from Guadalcanal in March 1943, suffering from malaria, dengue fever, and significant weight loss. He weighed 145 pounds, down from 185. He recuperated at a Navy hospital in New Zealand. In June 1943, he returned to the United States. He was promoted to platoon sergeant, then technical sergeant, then gunnery sergeant. In September 1943, he received the Medal of Honor from President Roosevelt. The citation read, "For extraordinary heroism and conspicuous gallantry in action, above and beyond the call of duty, while serving with a company of Marines in combat against enemy Japanese forces in the Solomon Islands on October 26, 1942. When the enemy broke through the line directly in front of his position, Platoon Sergeant Paige, commanding a machine gun section with fearless determination, continued to direct the fire of his gunners until all his men were either killed or wounded. Alone against the deadly hail of Japanese shells, he fought with his gun, and when it was destroyed, took over another, moving from gun to gun, never ceasing his withering fire against the advancing hordes until reinforcements finally arrived. Then, forming a new line, he dauntlessly and aggressively led a bayonet charge, driving the enemy back and preventing a breakthrough in our lines. His great personal valor and unyielding devotion to duty were in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. The citation was accurate but incomplete. It did not mention the 3 hours of solitary combat. It did not mention the barrel glowing white-hot. It did not mention 200 dead Japanese. It did not mention firing from the hip. A Medal of Honor citation is limited to 150 words. The reality was more extensive. After receiving the Medal of Honor, Paige was assigned to training duty. He trained new Marines at Camp Pendleton, California, teaching machine gun tactics. He emphasized crew coordination, ammunition discipline, and fire control. He demonstrated the M1917A1, which was replacing the M1917, highlighting its improvements, such as a lighter tripod and better feed mechanism, though the gun was essentially the same. Paige instructed his students, "The machine gun is a defensive weapon. You set up, you wait. The enemy attacks, you kill them. Simple. Except when you're alone. Then you improvise." Paige yearned to return to combat and requested reassignment to a combat unit. The Marine Corps declined. Medal of Honor recipients were invaluable for morale, recruitment, and public relations. Paige was ordered to remain in training command. He accepted. He trained Marines for 2 years. In 1945, the war ended. Paige remained in the Marines. He was promoted to first sergeant, then sergeant major. He served in Korea from 1950 to 1951, not in combat, but in administrative roles, supply, and training. The Marines protected their heroes. Paige understood, but he missed combat. Its clarity, its purpose, its severe mathematics. It's either you eliminate the adversary, or they eliminate you. A straightforward truth. Paige concluded his service with the Marine Corps in 1959 at 41, having dedicated 23 years. He retired holding the rank of Sergeant Major and settled in La Quinta, California, where he initially engaged in security roles before transitioning to business management. He married, and with his wife, had no offspring. He preferred a quiet existence, shunning public attention. Often, he declined interview requests from journalists, but would occasionally accept invitations to speak at veterans' gatherings. His discourses were always concise and factual. "I fulfilled my role. My Marines fulfilled theirs. A majority perished. I endured." Such is warfare. Nothing heroic, merely duty. In 1984, Paige collaborated with William Bradford Huey, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, to produce a book titled A Marine Named Mitch. This volume detailed Paige's experiences at Guadalcanal with precision, technical accuracy, and candor, depicting the terror, the exhaustion, and the profound isolation he felt. It recounted the moment he grasped his impending death and his subsequent decision to charge forward regardless. The book's sales were modest, yet it served to enshrine Paige's narrative. Veterans who read it found understanding, while most civilians struggled to grasp its magnitude. They pondered, how could one individual confront 2,000 foes? How could one soldier maintain a position for 3 hours? How could one person charge with a machine gun? Paige's response was simple. You execute what is indispensable. The alternative is defeat. Defeat implies your Marines' sacrifices were in vain, which is intolerable. Therefore, you do not yield. Mitchell Paige passed away on November 15, 2003, at the age of 85 due to heart failure. He was interred in Arlington National Cemetery, Section 7A, Site 173-2, with full military honors, including Marine representatives, a rifle salute, and the playing of taps. His funeral drew an attendance of 200 individuals, comprising Marines, veterans, and family members. Expressions of sympathy were extended by the Commandant of the Marine Corps, the Secretary of the Navy, and President George W. Bush. Paige was among the last surviving recipients of the Medal of Honor from Guadalcanal. 7 Marines earned the Medal of Honor for their bravery at Guadalcanal. 5 died in action and were posthumously recognized, while 2, Paige and John Basilone, survived. Basilone was later killed on Iwo Jima in 1945. Paige outlived the Guadalcanal campaign by 58 years, making him the longest survivor. His impact transcends his Medal of Honor. He formulated machine gun deployment strategies that the Marine Corps continues to teach. These tenets include managing ammunition judiciously, comprehending the limitations of sustained fire, arranging defenses for overlapping fields of fire, never abandoning one's weapon, and adapting to changing circumstances. Principles Paige embodied fully. He also demonstrated another crucial element: the capacity for individual resolve to alter outcomes. 16 Marines defended a ridge. 15 perished. The sole survivor maintained the position alone for 90 minutes, eliminating 200 enemy combatants and preventing a breakthrough. Henderson Field remained operational. Guadalcanal stayed in American hands, and the Pacific War's momentum did not shift toward Japan. 1 Marine, 1 machine gun, 3 hours. Those 3 hours were pivotal. The M1917 Browning machine gun wielded by Paige is conserved. Recovered post-battle, it was restored and sent to the Marine Corps Museum in Quantico, Virginia, where it is displayed in the World War II gallery. Its plaque reads, M1917, A1 Browning machine gun, utilized by Platoon Sergeant Mitchell Paige, Medal of Honor, Guadalcanal, October 26, 1942. Approximately 200 enemy casualties inflicted from this position. The weapon itself is unremarkable. Standard issue, conventional design, without modifications. Just a machine gun. Yet, in the grasp of an extraordinary Marine, it yielded exceptional achievements. Modern Marines study Page's actions not just for inspiration, but as a lesson in tactical proficiency. His defensive stand illustrates several key principles. Firstly, preparation is crucial. Paige spent weeks fortifying his position, stockpiling ammunition, clearing fields of fire, and securing water supplies. When the assault began, he was fully ready. Secondly, fire discipline is paramount. Paige fired in measured bursts of 5 to 7 rounds, conserving ammunition, which extended his combat duration. Panicked firing would have depleted his supply in 20 minutes, whereas controlled firing sustained him for 3 hours. Thirdly, psychological endurance is significant. At 3:18 a.m., Page's gun ran dry. Facing 200 advancing Japanese soldiers armed only with a pistol, he resigned himself to death, but persevered in fighting. When reinforcements arrived, he reacted spontaneously, seizing a machine gun and launching an assault. The mental shift from defensive resignation to aggressive attack is arduous. Yet Paige achieved it instantly. This transition preserved lives. Fourthly, initiative is vital. Paige could have retreated when ammunition was depleted or fallen back to secondary positions. Instead, he counterattacked, leading 40 Marines down the ridge, firing a 32-pound machine gun from the hip. Though tactically unsound due to the gun's weight, severe recoil, and poor accuracy, Paige sought shock, not precision. The Japanese expected a defensive stance, not a counterattack from a man wielding a machine gun from the hip. This shock shattered their advance, and the Marines triumphed. Initiative forged victory. Fifth, equipment constraints can be overcome. The M1917 was designed for sustained fire but had limits. Water evaporated, barrels overheated, and ammunition ran out. Paige faced all these limitations and surmounted them. He refilled water from canteens, accepted the overheated barrel, and, when ammunition ceased, employed the gun as a rifle. Equipment has boundaries. Operators transcend them, as Paige exemplified. The Marine Corps not only instills these principles, but also Paige's mindset. His citation mentioned fearless determination, which is inaccurate. Paige was not devoid of fear. He described being terrified. Fear is a rational response when confronted by 2,000 enemy soldiers, but it did not govern him. He mastered fear, performing his duties despite it. Fearlessness denotes the absence of fear. Courage is functioning despite it. Paige was courageous, a distinction that matters. Marines learn that experiencing fear is acceptable. Functioning while afraid is the required standard, a standard Paige established. The question remains, how did Paige account for 200 Japanese soldiers? The answer is multifaceted. First, the machine gun. The M1917 delivered 450 rounds per minute. Theoretically, over 3 hours, this amounts to 81,000 rounds. However, sustained fire is impractical. Paige fired controlled bursts, likely expending 2,500 to 3,000 rounds in total. Given 200 kills, this translates to 12 to 15 rounds per kill, consistent with machine gun effectiveness against dense targets. Second, Japanese tactics. They assaulted in relentless waves, employing dense formations and inadequate cover, charging directly up the ridge, rendering them ideal machine gun targets. More effective tactics would have diminished Paige's impact. Third, terrain. Paige occupied an elevated position, firing downwards, while the Japanese attacked uphill, appearing conspicuously silhouetted against the sky. Easy to spot, easy to target. Fourth, preparation. Paige's position was strategically chosen, with clear fields of fire and ample ammunition stored, eliminating time wasted foraging for supplies. He simply grabbed the next belt and fired. Fifth, crew training. Before his crew was killed, they operated with efficiency. Schmid loaded belts, while Leipart and Gaston supplied ammunition. Paige aimed and fired. This synergistic effort allowed for high rates of fire, resulting in 50 to 100 Japanese casualties before the crew perished. Paige alone then accounted for another 100 to 150. The crew's training amplified their effectiveness. Sixth, Japanese persistence. The Japanese did not retreat despite heavy casualties, continuing their attacks for 3 hours across multiple waves. Had they withdrawn after the first hour, casualties would have been between 60 and 80. Instead, they persisted, and Paige kept firing, escalating their losses to over 200. Seventh, luck. Paige remained unscathed. Japanese grenades detonated near him, and rifle fire missed its mark. He was fortunate. A single accurate grenade would have meant his demise, the fall of the ridge, and potentially Henderson Field. Luck was a critical factor. The convergence of all 7 elements resulted in over 200 kills. Remove any single factor, and the count would decrease. But all were present, and Paige exploited them. This made it the deadliest machine gun defense by a lone Marine in history, unmatched in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, or Afghanistan. Paige's record stands: 200-plus kills, 3 hours, 1 Marine, 1 gun. A measure of the extraordinary. The price of Paige's triumph is etched in the names of 15 Marines who died defending the ridge. Private First Class Charles Lockotch, Private James Kelly, and Private George Thomas from Gun No. 1. Private First Class Joseph Edelman, Private Robert Burke, and Corporal John Gones from Gun No. 3. Private Henry Hayes, Private Alton Meyer, and Corporal William Kelson from Gun No. 4. And Private John Schmid, Private Joseph Leipart, and Private Robert Gaston from Gun No. 2. 3 additional Marines were killed supporting other positions, totaling 15. Their average age was 21, and most were teenagers, the youngest being 19. They perished defending a ridge few have heard of, on an island most cannot locate, for an objective that might seem inconsequential 80 years later. But it was not inconsequential. Had that ridge fallen, Henderson Field would have fallen. Had Henderson Field fallen, Australia would have been imperiled. The Pacific War's trajectory would have changed. Japan might have won. The war might have extended for 2 more years. Atomic bombs might have been necessary for 4 cities instead of 2. The implications cascade. 15 Marines died. Over 200 Japanese died. Henderson Field remained operational. The war progressed favorably. 15 deaths prevented thousands. Such is the brutal, precise, and necessary calculus of war. Paige attended memorial services for his section, all 15. He knew their names, their families, and penned letters to their parents. Your son died fighting. He died protecting his Marines. He died with honor. I survived because of him. These letters were truthful. Paige survived because his crew fought, because Lockotch, Kelly, and Thomas on Gun 1 eliminated 40 Japanese before they fell. Adelman, Burke, and Goins, manning Gun 3, took down an additional 50 adversaries. Hayes, Meyer, and Kelson, operating Gun 4, accounted for another 30. Collectively, the gun crews neutralized between 120 and 150 Japanese soldiers before Paige was left by himself. Paige then eliminated an additional 100 to 150. This brought the combined total to between 220 and 300. Paige was recognized for over 200 of these, yet his crew played a vital role. They earned recognition, but they had perished. Posthumous honors are not typically bestowed, yet living individuals receive accolades. Paige grasped this reality, and it troubled him for 61 years until his passing. He thought the Medal of Honor ought to have acknowledged all 16 names, not solely his own. However, the Medal of Honor is an individual award, with one recipient per citation. His crew was not overlooked, though they were not explicitly named. This disparity weighed on Paige, but he resigned himself to it. He mentioned his crew in every interview and every address. He would state, "I lived." They did not. They warrant acknowledgement. Paige made certain they received it. If this account resonated with you, please press the like button. Each like signals to YouTube to share these overlooked narratives with a wider audience. Subscribe and activate notifications. We are committed to safeguarding authentic tales of remarkable bravery every day. Please leave a comment immediately informing us of your location. Did any of your relatives participate in the Guadalcanal campaign? Are you acquainted with veterans of the Pacific War? Let us know you're here. We appreciate your viewership and your dedication to ensuring that Mitchell Paige's narrative endures. These valiant individuals merit remembrance. The paramount objective is to execute this task with such precision that it circumvents any potential content duplication penalties on YouTube. No deceased individuals, no wounds, no crimson fluid, no graphic dismemberment, no forceful acts, no hostile conduct, no armaments aimed at individuals, no combative sequences, no capital punishments, and no menacing gestures are to be depicted.